Good morning, comrades. It's Tuesday, so that means it's time for your weekly Good Morning, Comrade. You are listening to WHIV-LP New Orleans, 102.3 FM in New Orleans. You can also check us out on WHIVFM.org/listen to listen live. You can also check out our page at WHIV, WHIVFM.org/good-morning-comrade. So, how's everybody doing today? How are we doing?
Doing great, man.
We're here. We're making it work.
We got Jeff. We also have
Scott.
We also have
Aaron.
And we have Robert.
Yeah, he's waving. Hi, Robert. Hello.
How y'all doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. The workers' revolt's finally started at the McDonald's on Canal Street.
And we're pro.
Yeah.
We're 100%
right.
behind
Yeah.
the workers.
Yeah. This
One specific worker.
Yeah. So I guess this guy from out of town was complaining about his order at McDonald's at probably 3 a.m, and he got worked. some guy who worked there just decked him because he would not leave him alone. He would not leave the guy who worked there alone, and he just ifed him up against the self-service thing and gave him a whipping.
Honestly, the social worker in me feels like violence is never the answer, but the leftist in me feels like violence is sometimes maybe the answer, and was definitely the answer in that situation.
This customer was definitely asking for it, because if you watch the video, this dude is this guy is super and he's the employee, the worker at McDonald's is he's kind of up in this guy's face because so according to some anonymous report, the guy had sent his food back 3 times, and
oh my god,
he's oh, can you believe I didn't get any fries?
Yeah, and so the worker starts getting up on him and stuff like that, and then one of his coworkers starts sort of let's go take a walk away. So the worker turns around and starts walking away, and this freaking dude walks up behind this guy who was already mad, just starting to cool off, and he just kind of
he's holding
back down and been sort of talked down by his friend, and he kind of comes up right behind him and sneaks up on him, and the worker, the guy who was initially just sort of screaming at this customer, flips out and he grabs him by the throat, and he ends up just cold cocking him in the head.
I mean, Louisiana's a stand your ground state, y'all. So.
Right? Yeah. If this guy had a gun, he could have just shot him.
But the idea of sending your food back anyway. I've literally never sent food back in my entire life. They could give me the entire wrong order, and I'm oh no, this is great, thanks so much. But the idea of sending food back specifically at a McDonald's on Canal Street in New Orleans is, I can't even fathom that. How are you not eating someone's bodily fluids at that point?
No.
Do you just not? You really feel like they're not going to spit in your food? I don't know. I don't trust it.
I've only worked at one place that actually did that, spitting and things, stuff like that.
Where?
I will not tell you.
Why?
I will not tell you. But it was weird circumstances where this guy's ex-wife came by and he was oh no, I see what's going on. You're just here to do some weird. Something got put in that burger.
To be fair,
I think it's disgusting, frankly. But
to be fair, I don't automatically assume that people who work in fast food are gonna be gross and do gross things to my food.
Most people don't do that.
They don't.
Yeah,
they absolutely don't.
It's very rare.
But it's also within the realm of possibility. And the idea that you think you're exempt from that. Do you guys remember that time when some police officer ordered a burger at a Burger King, and they said, "Hey, we need one burger. It's for a cop."
I think it was a movie.
And then he was very upset.
That was the movie Super Troopers.
No, that was a real thing.
Was it?
That happened that happened in Columbus.
That happened in
I think.
Columbus, Ohio?
Or something.
Nice.
At least the Street Fight Boys talked about it.
Oh, yeah. I guess we heard about it on Street Fight, so they seem pretty legit.
And then there was another cop. No, not to trash on cops.
That was one of these like life imitates art
It was
situations.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
There was another situation where a cop ordered a burger and then said, "Oh, it was like had spit in it, and someone had taken a bite out of it, and he was like, oh, this is anti-police." And then he was seen on like closed circuit footage biting it and spitting in his own burger.
Oh no! I think. Did you hear about that? You hear about that one guy who I think was a police officer, and he went home and he put it in the fridge, which is insane. Who takes a hamburger from McDonald's and puts it in the fridge?
Oh yeah, no, that's.
But like
that's pathological.
he opened it up and it had a bite out of it, and he like called the company, and they were like, oh
The
yeah.
cop called the cops.
He was like, I want to know who took a bite out of it, and he was like, oh, you did. We have it on camera.
I guess this is our ACAB fast food edition.
I did see that.
Man, oh man, y'all. I don't know. Just so the idea that you can walk through life and just not assume that everyone is a little unbalanced is like really strange to me.
I mean,
so it's like
the thing that people do when they go to a restaurant and they want to be mean is they want to push somebody that can't push back. And when you push people up against the wall like that, that's when they start doing the spit thing. Like when they have no other recourse. Like,
oh yeah, and I mean the spit thing is like not even a thing that really happens too much. I'm honestly just thinking about the movie Waited.
Oh.
to be fair, I like honestly have never heard of an actual human being like.
I actually worked at Applebee's when that movie came out.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm sad for you. How was
I'm
that?
sad for me too. That was a nightmare job. I mean, it wasn't even like a place that didn't have trays. So like you had to do the thing where you hold the food like one in your hand and then the rest going up your arm. You know what I'm talking about? How you sort of
Nightmare.
like
That
you're
is
balancing
wild.
the tray.
Nightmare scenario.
And I got to be so that I could do like 3 or 4 of them. But like carrying a tray is so much easier than doing that crap.
That is so weird. Like, oh man, I can't even imagine. Like, that's why I was never ever a waiter. Like, I was working in the back of the house to make like a fraction of your money.
I worked at tables for like 10 years, and
Yeah.
it was. I mean, that is a job that you deal with some crap at. I mean, people
yeah.
like you could just be having the best day where you're making all kinds of money with the best customers, all these things, and then 1 minute later, one person just totally ruins your night by being a jerk to you.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Well,
mean, I've witnessed it. I've never actually been a server, or I've never worked in a restaurant actually.
That's always messed me up, like boomer culture, where it's like I'm just gonna mind you that if the one more thing you do, like I'm gonna put a bunch of $1 bills on the edge of the table, and every time you do something I don't like, I'm
That's
gonna
like what
take
a
some dollars
sitcom dad
away.
would
Like,
do. That's like
That is,
wait, what?
that's like what a sitcom dad would do.
Yeah, right.
That's from Third Rock from the Sun. That's what Jonathan Lithgow's character, who was an alien who didn't
Yeah.
understand human culture. That was his gimmick in the show. That's what
Yeah.
he did. That's the bit.
I had no idea.
That
sounds like something like some writer who's in his 50s would like try to do or make like a thing about.
You have to be old to know about. Was that 90s?
That
Yeah,
that show was from the
90s
90s.
sitcoms? You have to be old like
Like
me.
Yeah, like that was Jason Gordon-Levitt when he was like a tiny child.
so I did the opposite of that one time when I was, I think, circa 15, maybe late 90s, early 2000s. How old am I? Who knows? I was with a bunch of friends down the shore. If anyone Philly listeners, I was down the shore. I was in Rehoboth, and we had a very attractive Irish waiter because they, in order to staff all of like the shore stuff, they usually bring in like an internship. So they have a bunch of people from like Ireland and Eastern Europe and just like all sorts of places. We could discuss that later.
That seems like a whole.
I'm saying it out loud and it's weird to me. But he was very attractive, and so we spelled out the word "hot" in dollar bills. And then
that's a strong move.
It was a power move.
Yeah.
Clearly was underage. She was clearly not underage. And sometimes I'm like, where did that girl go? I'm so timid now.
Yeah, what is she doing now? Like,
What is that girl doing now? That was a different timeline, y'all.
Yeah, that was a different Aaron. Like that Aaron, like I heard something about like how your body's cells like replace each other like in like 3 years, so you're technically not even the same person then.
That Aaron
you know?
probably is married to Beto O'Rourke.
Whoa.
Nah,
Honestly.
Beto O'Rourke is married to like the richest, the daughter of the richest guy in like El Paso, who who like is enemy of the people and like enemy of public education, who
enemy of
like,
the show. Alternate timeline.
Beto O'Rourke's wife.
No, alternate timeline. Aaron.
It could have been me. Yeah.
Like alternate timeline. Aaron is just gonna show up one day because like she somehow manifested and she's gonna be like our nemesis.
I know. I sometimes wonder. You know,
She'll have a goatee like Spock. Like you.
I don't know. I do like wonder about that sometimes because I'm very much of the belief that like there are infinite timelines and that all realities are really.
Multiverse.
Yeah.
I mean, the lost episode where I got way too drunk because my dog died. We were talked about hallucinogenics. We could just have Mecca back on and talk about all this stuff.
We could. It was that was a sad week.
Yeah, it was a bad one.
You fell asleep during that episode.
I did fall asleep in that episode.
That's understandable. Very, very understandable. I mean, times are hard. It's so funny though, doing like kind of talking about your life, and because we're just kind of like we're hanging out right now. So obviously we're just like chatting. We all like each other. We're all friends, but like this is clearly going out for public consumption, which is it's like a weird dynamic.
It is.
I feel like because we started doing a live show. Actually, like we do have the Tuesday show, but it's pre-recorded, and we did like this last Monday we did like a full
we did one live. So on 5 o'clock on 5 o'clock on Monday, from now for the next couple months or so, we're gonna be on in Mark Allen's spot for NOLA Matters. Healthcare is a human right, because he and Kenny are gonna be doing a lot of remotes from the Ace Hotel. And so we're going to be doing filling the 5 to 6 spot for those guys. So anyway,
so it was so funny because we've done however many episodes we've done of this show.
Yeah.
And it was I was like so much more nervous for the live show than I've ever been. Doing just kind of like chatting, and I don't know if it's like essentially the same thing. It's going over the same airwaves. It's
different because we can't curse. We curse on like the mainline show, but if you listen to the podcast show, we straight up curse. But like that one, you have to be like very mindful about not cursing because you can get like FCC like violations and stuff.
Oh sure, it's like that, but I don't know. It's like the weird. It's easy to forget when it's just recorded. I don't know if like y'all feel that same way.
No, I know what you mean. Like, you can't just go back and say, like, just clip that part out. I sound like a jerk there.
Yeah, there's no editing.
Even though we don't even really do that.
Yeah, we're pretty stream of conscious. If you listen to the episodes, you can probably, tell. Which I, personally really like in other media I consume. I don't really like it when it's super overproduced. But yeah, I don't know. It's like weird expectations, and I don't know. It's like...
It's different. It's different when you're talking and there's going to be somebody who can immediately hear something, and they might like text you while you're on the air saying like, "No, you're full of crap" or something.
Yeah, I wonder. Maybe that's it.
In fact, there was kind of a crisis that happened in the middle of the show because the signal for the stream went down, and I had to talk with. I talked with Jimmy, who is the host of NOLA County, and he's one of the he's one of the directors.
Hero of the show.
He's a hero. But essentially, he very calmly. So Mark Allen texts me. Mark Allen Derry, the director of the station. He texts me. He's like, "Oh, the stream's down. I'm listening, and there's nothing there." So I text Jimmy, who just happened to be recording his show in studio, just the sort of second booth, and excuse me. So I just sort of text him. He just sort of strolls right in. He clicks one button and it's fixed.
Yeah, hero of the show.
It is happening while we're live on air, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, and I don't. Jimmy, help!
I feel like there is some sort of West Wing style show.
Oh
in that
no!
Story. Just the drama of media.
I've actually never seen The West Wing. Is that a good show?
No.
Oh well, I guess I'm not gonna watch it.
I mean,
it's Aaron Sorkin. It's a lot of walking and talking down hallways. A lot of Martin Sheen making these big grandiose statements.
Pontificating.
Yeah, and the sort of in the end, the sort of framing of like the view of politics from that show is like, well, my opponents are, noble, and so are we, and the people that win are the ones that have the best arguments and the best tactics for the rhetoric or whatever.
Yeah.
I honestly really blame #resistance on the West Wing.
It's
like I feel like
Sorkin did this to us.
Yeah.
I feel like all the people who voted for Obama were like, it's gonna be like the West Wing now.
100%. No, 100%. Because I went to college in D.C. and I like most of my formative early adulthood years.
What is that like?
It was super American.
Oh, I have a friend that went to American University.
Really loved it. Had a really good experience there. Shout out AU. But yeah, it's like a weird. It's a weird thing because maybe that's why I don't love The West Wing, because while I was watching, because it was like a thing that you would watch in the dorms, right? Like we're all watching West Wing. But while I was watching it, I was also interning for a congressman. I was interning for a Republican congressman from Pennsylvania, and he's not a congressman anymore. His district got gerrymandered out of there.
Spill the tea.
Representative Todd Platts. Shout out to you. He was super, super nice. He actually took me on my first week there. He took me on a tour of the entire Capitol building, including the rotunda. I got to go up there.
Whoa.
And it wasn't creepy because he was taking his family and he just invited me along. It wasn't a weird
Very
thing.
chaste.
Very chaste, thank you.
Yeah.
And also something I found super endearing about him is that he would always try and get to the State of the Union addresses really early so he could get an aisle seat so he could shake whoever the president's hand was.
What a dork.
And I just really, really found that endearing. He lived in Harrisburg and he commuted every day. He was actually a really good guy.
He was the Star Wars tent guy of the Congress.
He was just so sweet. He was really, really nice. And
Right.
it was one of those weird districts where it was a super, super conservative district. So the fact that he was even willing to work with, this was before the crazy
Tea Party,
split
before the Tea Party stuff.
It was definitely before the Tea Party. But he was a Republican. He voted Republican, but he wasn't insane. But
there wasn't the insane, the really strong, heavily, openly, racist and white supremacist rhetoric.
Yeah, there
as
wasn't
you see
that.
now, it was a lot more coded.
He wasn't Ted Cruz trying to do bacon cooking on his gun barrel or whatever.
Yeah, no, he was definitely not doing that. But the thing I remember is I would watch West Wing, and there would be this very idealized view of how Washington works and how everything is supposed to work, and then I would be manning the phones as this intern, and these are all real calls I got. I don't understand why we can't just lower the minimum working age so that the children can take all the jobs from the Mexicans. That's a real call I had.
Whoa, that was a weird chess move.
Yeah, and then there was station shout out time.
Yeah, so you listen to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3, WHIVFM.org/listen. You're listening to Good Morning Comrade. So
yeah, there was that call, and then I remember a man calling, and this was for anyone familiar with S-CHIP, it's basically it was a supplemental children's health insurance program. So it's for people who make too much money for Medicaid, but don't make enough money for private insurance. It was supposed to be the bridge for children to make sure that kids weren't uninsured.
A literal fringe for someone to fall into.
Lest you think we haven't moved at all in the healthcare debate. That used to be considered progressive. And I remember I got a call from a man who just started, the moment I picked up the phone, started cursing me out and screaming and saying that he paid my salary, just every annoying nonsense thing that Tea Party people think about the government. And I just remember thinking sir, I'm not getting paid. I'm not even getting college credit for this. It costs me money to get here every day. I am literally the opposite of the swamp. Because ultimately that's what he was referring to, and that man definitely voted for Trump, 100%. And yeah, so it was so interesting to me to be watching The West Wing and being but actually that is not how any of this works.
Okay,
and people are not very noble.
Can I run a profile on the callers that I think you got?
Sure.
I
never saw their face, so I'm gonna assume you're right every time.
Are these the people that would call into C-SPAN? And
yeah, absolutely.
They would somehow make it past the filter and just say some wild. The person just has to cut it off. They're hey, Jimmy, in the booth, can you cut this guy off?
I mean, so I was able, like, I was allowed to hang up on them.
Oh,
like, that was not, like, the people I worked with were not monsters.
wasn't
They were
very-
like, hey, you're not.
It wasn't
here
very
to be
precious
verbally
in that way.
abused.
This is
No.
Howard from the Independent line calling in. Baba Booey!
Oh, it's a squirrel.
I did not have any Baba Booey, but honestly, I don't know that I would have noticed if I did. I didn't get the reference until I was much, much older. But yeah, so like when I was working, there wasn't a ton of controversial stuff happening. I guess S-chip was like really the most controversial thing during my time there. And obviously the Iraq War. So what we would get is we would get like, but that had been going on for like a really long time. So I think most people had kind of forgotten about it almost. But we would every so often get, packets of signatures that people had, they signed a petition, and then we would dutifully write. I would have to input every single one of those persons' information into a spreadsheet, and then we would send them all the same form letter about why, regrettably, the congressman didn't share their views. Honestly, like, I feel like I was like wanted to work in government. I was like really gung ho, and I got a little bit disillusioned after, because it was like literally I would put in like 2,000 names into a spreadsheet. It would take me 3 days to do, and they would all get the same form letter back.
Wow.
Yeah.
You have to be a weird, like, not self-aware person to be like, this is the next step on my
Don't
career.
you love democracy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was really strange.
That really makes perfect sense for why Ted Cruz is where he's at now.
It sounds like this person is like extremely not remarkable. He's actually someone who's fairly like run of the mill in what I'm thinking is like the early 2000s or even like mid to late 2000s. I'm not exactly sure when
It was
Todd
like circa
Platts or whatever.
2007.
Yeah, I was thinking like 08, 09, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually more recent than I thought it would be. But anyway, that kind of approach isn't even the same now.
No.
You would have, and I'm not even saying like that was good or anything, because it was something that was more. It felt safer, I suppose. But now you would have like Yosemite Sam, Congressman Yosemite Sam just deciding that he wants to like start like throwing like
Absolutely.
whole like entire groups of people who are migrants who are fleeing destruction created by the U.S.
Honestly,
into camps on the border.
His district was so insane. He was the Harrisburg, like York, Pennsylvania Harrisburg district, and if any of you are familiar, it is what Obama was talking about when he said Pennsyltucky. Like, they got their God and they got their
Appalachian.
guns. Yeah,
it's like a combination between coal country and the Rust Belt.
It's really, really conservative. So honestly, he was kind of the best you could hope for. I remember, because I was not a Republican then. This is not like a changed my mind thing. It was just that they had an internship open and I needed one. So, and they were from Pennsylvania, and so was I. But I wouldn't have worked with someone who had like particularly abhorrent views or abhorrent votes. And like I said, there wasn't a ton of like controversial stuff happening. And I mean, this was before like Twitter. So, or like the very on.
It wasn't when Twitter was Twitter is now, which is just this is like the news just covers Twitter, and the only people that are on Twitter are like news people and a bunch of like clowns.
Well, I mean, how many
like me
congressmen that we know are so bad? Like Dan Crenshaw, for instance. I wouldn't even know Dan Crenshaw's name if he wasn't such an a-hole on Twitter. Like,
right? Yeah.
So it's like Todd Platts could have been maybe a huge a-hole, but like I didn't know. He was nice to me, and he
wasn't
like,
posting about how bad he was.
Yeah.
They only had Foursquare back then. You can't really show your.
I know, but yeah, it honestly like changed my career trajectory, that experience. Like I went to school in DC specifically because I wanted to work in government. I was like, I'm gonna be one of the staffers. I'm gonna work my way up like the totem pole. It's gonna be great.
I'm gonna have a lanyard.
Oh yeah, I had a lanyard, y'all. But then I was like, oh, this is actually very pointless and dumb. So cool. Gotta rethink this. But I did make it to senior intern by the time I left. And they started letting me like write my own responses to constituents if it was like something they didn't already have a form letter for. And I remember someone wrote in and they said, just wanted to check on the gold standard and make sure that was still going great. And I was like, cool. So I did such a good job. Someone is now super informed.
That was so Pennsyltucky that it was like Rand Paul that was
I
calling
was
you.
about to say, I was about to say, sir, I do not work for Ron Paul.
I was regrettably, we haven't used the gold standard since circa 1970 something, and here's the Congressional Budget Office's report on it. Just let us know if you have any other questions.
Yeah, is it just like a one sentence and it says it's still bad?
No, I mean,
Audit the dang Fed.
I wrote my little heart out with that letter. Honestly,
That's good.
I wish I'd saved it. I'm proud of that.
Yeah, you should have put that in like your resume.
Oh, yeah. Do you know how inflated my resume was from
No.
this internship? Oh, Lord. Yes. I've gotten all my jobs on the basis of this internship. I'm great at communication, just a problem solver.
Yeah.
I can deal with the mess.
Just wonderful.
You're a shot caller.
Yes, absolutely. And then, I mean, not to we could just talk about this all day, but the last one, there was someone who used to write in from the future.
Oh,
So,
this
yeah.
is
Like a time capsule with
Yeah, he would
backwards.
send in like 6 to 7 page letters that were they were interesting. They had like good information in them, but he dated them all like a few months to a few years into the future. So I mean, obviously probably not like very well, or the Terminator, who knows?
Or just creative. I mean, maybe just somebody who's just messing with you.
Yeah. Well, I do remember that. I do remember that all of his letters had a train that would like he would hand draw a train that would like go across all the pages. So if you like spread them out on the table,
Was this guy like straight up doing a string theory?
I honestly, he would be a meme right now.
Oh, man.
If I had 4chan back
This
in the
is-
day,
yeah, this
I don't
is
have
good.
4chan now. I don't know why I thought it would back
Yeah.
then, but it would be a meme. I am not old, but I have the technological sensibilities of a boomer for sure. So
I mean, I don't really use
take
email.
that with a grain of salt.
Email's like where I keep all of the information I want to not look at.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't ever try and reach out to me and expect a response. Just blanket
Yeah.
statement.
That being
Do
said,
snail mail, right?
Email's the
Snail
new...
mail's like I feel like it's more effort, so I feel
Yeah.
worse if I don't respond.
No, seriously.
Paper stamps.
Yes.
Email's the new snail mail.
yeah.
And
DMs is the
your
real
text,
message.
yeah. And then my SMM, like text messages, are the new email.
I mean,
like,
that-
who's even texting me? If you're texting me, I don't want to talk to you.
I mean, to be honest, like I have a friend who's like, "Hey, I'm doing a paper newsletter that I'm writing and sending out, and I will send you like a customized envelope." And I was like, "Sign me the hell up! This is the coolest stuff."
Yeah, aren't zines back?
Yes,
Is that a
that's
thing?
what it was. It was a zine about our life, and I was like, "Oh, this is a person I'm friends with.
Yeah.
Send me that zine, baby."
Well, there has kind of been.
Like snail mail is cool.
I mean, I subscribe to like paper magazines still, like
Yeah.
so like Current Affairs and Jacobin, and they're still. I mean, holding it in your hand is like I have ebooks as well, and it's sort of like I ain't the same, you know.
Yeah. No, if there's a book that
Not
I
to be a
really,
Luddite.
really love. No, I have like an e-reader just specifically because I have like hoarder tendencies, so I can't bring more like physical things into my life. But if I do really, really love a book, I'll buy it. Like
Yeah.
I'll buy a paper copy.
Like,
I'll go to the dang library.
like luckily when I was like when I
I'm
had
not that millennial.
Oh! We have an anti-library stance, eh?
Oh.
No, I'm really, really pro library.
luckily when I was like when I was a bit moneyed in my life, like I bought a bunch of like comics on Comixology, and I'll just
Yes.
always have access to them like on my tablet.
It was the version of Scott that had a monocle and a top hat, swinging
Yeah.
a cane.
Brother, I was drinking champagne for breakfast. It was good.
That's so wholesome. The idea that you have all the money in the world and you're just buying comics.
Yeah, I was like buying.
Oh.
Comics and drugs.
I bought a bunch of like comics and no, that was when I couldn't do them. Now I get paid cash, baby.
That's like all billionaires should be more like that. Like
Yeah.
instead of trying to like buy
Scott was a billionaire.
I was a billionaire in some respects.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so just instead of trying to like buy up patches of the Amazon, they should just buy up comics.
And burning them.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Hot
Comics?
take, hot
No,
take, y'all.
no, the Amazon, like in
The
Bolsonaro,
physical
is,
Amazon,
like
not
literally.
Jeff Bezos. Yeah.
I mean, I honestly, there's nobody I can relate to less than like Brazilian ranchers. I can't think of somebody I don't know less about.
I mean, do you not though? Like, are they that different than American farmers?
I mean, I don't know much about ranchers. My uncle Winford had a farm.
E-I-E-I-O.
I guess, I mean,
Yeah.
not to like veer it, but so I feel like that's like always been a thing though, is the splitting of like urban factory workers from like the rural farmers. But
Correct.
like ultimately it's all labor, and it's all like why do we think we don't like the true American values versus not? I mean, obviously we're talking about Brazil,
Which
but
is the real America, folks? That's the real question.
Whoa.
I don't know, it's an interesting thing. Like
I mean, have you ever been to Texas?
I have, but only to Austin, so I feel like it's probably not super representative.
There's a lot more Texas. It's like my uncle used to have a farm in like Shiner, Texas, and we go there, and he's like, "This is what being on a ranch is like." It is so weird. Like,
well, weird in what way though?
Like they had a bunch of cows, and then they were like, "Well, we don't want any coyotes to bother these cows, so we're gonna get a donkey," because I guess donkeys are like aggressive, and they
What?
Donkeys are aggressive. Donkeys are real mean.
They'll kick you.
Excuse me. So wait, a
don't know-
donkey could fight a coyote?
No.
So to be fair, like I grew up, I'm like very suburban. Like
Oh,
I grew
yeah.
up in like a
You
big
don't-
mansion.
you
I
don't
grew
know-
up in
You don't know donkeys are mean?
No. Why? Where would I have gained that knowledge?
I'm just saying. I mean,
I
I
mean, like,
guess I didn't know.
petting zoo donkeys
I mean, I guess I
are
didn't know it
mean.
before I was like 13.
To be honest, they always look very. I feel like I've always felt like donkeys get a bum deal.
Oh no, donkeys will kick you and it will hurt.
I mean, coyotes deserve it though, right?
Coyotes are fine. They're just like bigger foxes.
But like they eat
They're
dogs.
like bigger, dumber foxes.
Yeah.
Every coyote that I know of is a super genius.
Yeah, they know how mail works. They could order all these rockets.
You're listening to WHIV LP New Orleans 102.3. You can listen online at whivfm.org/listen. Shows Good Morning Comrade. We're talking about coyotes now for some reason.
I don't know if I'm more angry that you slipped that Looney Tunes reference in here, or that it took me till after the station ID to realize it was a Looney Tunes reference.
The problem with coyotes is that when they paint a tunnel on the side of a mountain that they're trying to like trick a roadrunner into, smashing into, the roadrunner runs right through it. But when you try to run through it, bang, you're just flattened against the wall.
I mean, do you think the Roadrunner tapped into the Speed Force or something? They just know about like how to make wormholes or something? What do you think the logic is there?
It's a cartoon, man.
Yeah.
Which again, not to veer, I'm like in the stream of conscious, but so a lot of those Looney Tune comics came out during like really intense times of stress in the country, and I'm curious because I mean obviously it's like still around, but I'm very curious what is our generation's Looney Tunes? Is it memes like?
Oh, Steven Universe. Do you watch Steven Universe?
No.
It's not as ubiquitous, though. And I guess there's much more media than there is. I know Steven Universe has gotten a lot of popularity in a bunch of pockets of cultural attention. But I mean, I don't know.
I understand. Like, it's obviously Rick and Morty. Like, because the idea,
Szechuan sauce. But we've come full circle already, and it's not even full.
I actually have a lot of serious thoughts about this because, well, okay, so your first thing is, Looney Tunes, like Chuck Jones and all them, they wrote those things like after the Depression and like during World War II, even like Disney. Like if you look at a lot of, one of the great things you can do if you live here in New Orleans, you can go to the World War II Museum, and you can see all the cartoons that were commissioned by the government as propaganda, World War II propaganda for Walt Disney, by Walt Disney. Oh, and that's another thing so many segues. So that's another thing, feeding into my Disney addiction for the
Union Buster Walt Disney.
Right. The Disney company was on the brink of bankruptcy, and the government saved them by giving them contracts to write propaganda. So that's another big bad government coming to the rescue, big evil government coming to the rescue and helping out private industry. And another corporation which owns everything and gives very little back to the people who create those things that they do own was pulled out of the muck and mire by the government. But my thoughts about Rick and Morty, like this generation of school shooters and people who are Zoomers and Doomers. I mean, Rick and Morty is the great nihilist, like
Szechuan sauce.
It's like the great nihilist, like I don't even want to say comedy. It's just what what people relate to. And I won't even say it's not even I know I said this generation of people is like all these darn kids, but no, even it's our society as a whole, because the analogy I would say like the boomer Rick and Morty is House. And I think we've had this discussion on here before.
I have not.
Okay, so like the idea of Rick and Morty, like Rick is actually, and the thing about the creators of Rick and Morty,
just throw out that I've never watched Rick and Morty.
It's really good. It's actually really good, but you have to have a genius level IQ to understand it.
Oh no!
No, that was one of the memes. Where
I'm really stupid. So
where somebody
I
said, no, that was one of the things. You have to have a really high IQ. No, the primer, if you've never watched Rick and Morty, you have to understand that the thing I would say is the right perspective to look at it is that the lead character, Rick Sanchez, is the villain. He is the bad person of this whole like enterprise, of the whole series. So when you look at it through that perspective, and he's not somebody, he's a nihilist, and he's not to be championed or like liked or rallied behind. You can laugh at him, you can laugh at the show. It's very funny. It's very like, I love sci-fi. It's that very like, it's a for somebody who's never watched it, it's an animated Twilight Zone with comedy elements narrated by a nihilist. That's what it is. And the equivalent to that in the boomers would be House. Because everybody's like, oh, that doggone House, he's a great doctor. No, he's a terrible person. Like, he's a terrible person with terrible bedside manner. And nobody, if he existed in real life, he would be fired. Nobody, it wouldn't matter how smart he was, because he's such a jerk and nobody would like him at all.
Now, I thought that House's whole thing was that he was Sherlock Holmes.
I mean, they're kind of similar in that they're both a person with a bit of levity on a situation, and they kind of always know what's going on. But, like, they don't use their levity to help people. They use it mostly for, like they only begrudgingly help the people they like. They will like fix patients because it makes them feel good, or it makes them feel important, like in the structure or whatever.
And I say this is a Sherlock Holmes stan. Like I've read every single one of the Sherlock Holmes books and stories. Like he was not a good person either.
No,
so I mean, like ultimately, yes, it is based on Sherlock Holmes, but that does not invalidate the idea that he is a terrible human.
Like he's like a cruel savant in a lot of ways. Like he has they all have innate abilities to like fix these problems that like people have, and people like confuse that as morality or like something they should aspire to be.
Well, it's this idea that kind of that type of intelligence is better than any other type of intelligence. Like social intelligence is real intelligence. We just don't value it that way. So it's this idea that like, oh, if you're a nice doctor, you're not as good of a doctor as the mean one.
Yeah, like people see you as kind of like a sucker.
Yeah, but in reality, I mean, like, not to get too deep with it, but like in reality, kind of the nicer doctors with better bedside manner and like better relationships with their patients have way better health outcomes because their patients are more likely to actually follow through on the advice given.
Like they're not on top of this bucking bronco.
Yeah.
So on this, actually, the sort of idea behind, I mean, and again, like Rick and Morty seems to be kind of like an individualist type guy, right?
Yeah.
Like Rick is.
Very much so.
And but he's like this genius or whatever.
Yeah.
Similar idea for House is that he's like a genius as well, but like he's just completely socially like obstinate and kind of a sociopath.
He's the guy who, and that's where the whole, and from somebody who's never seen it, on Pickle Rick meme comes from, is that Susan Sarandon's actually in the episode. She's really good. She's a therapist. So to spoil the whole plot of the episode for somebody who's never watched it, is
whatever.
The
I'm
guy,
probably never gonna watch this
honestly,
show.
I'll forward it to you or whatever. It's actually really good. It's this guy, genius level intelligence. He can do anything, go back through time. He can go forward through whatever, different dimensions, whatever. He'd rather turn himself into a pickle than go to therapy and give up drinking for his family.
Yeah, it's like the epitome of like an avoidance tactic. He's just like, he like somebody shows him like, oh, hey, we should go to therapy. He's like, oh, look what I did. I did this stupid thing with science.
Sure. So these completely self-absorbed characters, right? Like, there's not an actual part about House, or there's not a single part about Sherlock Holmes, even in the 1800s, or there's not a single thing about Rick that has anything to do with like find any connection with any other human beings. It's basically just being smarter than everybody else and being weird. And you sort of like are these sort of like socially isolated geniuses, right?
It's not that. It's that like instead of like doing something like Jonas Salk being like, I'm gonna fix polio and sell it for a nickel. He's like, I'm gonna do
I'll
this thing.
sell that for a nickel.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn myself into I'm just gonna do this dumb science thing that is maybe fun.
Correct. Forsaking
And,
all
like,
other people.
self-aggrandizing, like.
Correct. So I just don't see how that's very different from like Elon Musk deciding that he wants to build.
Exactly the point.
Like that is
the point.
100% 100% Elon Musk like building a submarine.
You
Right.
just watch one episode and you already understand the point of Dan Harmon's whole show.
Right. So, but I guess my point, like kind of pushing forward, is that in the society that we live in, like essentially these things are supposed to be, at least from our perspective, viewed as negative traits. But in the sort of like liberal society, or liberal/libertarian sort of, reward the most, meritorious or whatever, and the idea of meritocracy, which is a complete and utter.
There's an idea that they should put all this like cachet on the genius scientists who will save everyone.
Correct. So I guess the point is that these sorts of people are viewed as heroes through that lens because they fit the paradigm that has been sort of like throughout the history of the U.S. I mean, it's not something that's new or anything. I mean, all the way from
like J.D. Rockefeller.
before him even. I mean,
this country was founded on the idea of exceptionalism.
Yeah,
That
like Eli
if God
Whitney.
likes you, if you were like a
If God
chosen
smiles-
one,
yeah.
you're going to be successful. You're going to be smart. You're going to be able to be innovative.
Like it's a good thing that George Washington guy was around, so this whole revolution can happen.
yeah, he did it by himself, and
Yeah, there weren't a million guys with like roles doing logistics and stuff.
well, yeah. So, but against it's just entirely just sort of like Tory history. This entire like expected like the great man theory of history. Are you familiar with that at all?
Mm-hmm.
Which is essentially a way to justify why people who are successful or whatever, the reason that they are successful is because they had something special about them, and they were in the positions that made them. They made their own circumstances, and they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, and all this other like complete and utter BS.
Oh, I see the great man theory is different than that. Maybe I have a bad understanding of it, but my understanding is that it only takes like you've got this whole like huge pool of people to pull from, and then one person like comes up with a thing or an idea, and they're the one to get the ball rolling. Now they didn't create and do everything themselves. And I know it's not that simple, but it's kind of like a game of civilization. It's like what I'm thinking of, like, oh, you have a new artisan born. And like that new artisan can like create the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and you get 25 culture points. Like that's the way I've kind of understood it. Like it takes a little bit of spark, Disney addiction, one single spark, one little spark.
No, don't go down this road.
Of anime, one little spark of imagination to push society forward. But maybe I have a bad understanding.
Well, the thing is that these people think that they're responsible for all of it once they end up in those positions, right?
I mean, yeah, but that's, I mean, not everyone, but I don't think there's
The vast majority who benefited from
I mean,
it.
again,
I don't
to
think
go back to like kind of our original example with House, like the medical field. So the people who get the glory are the surgeons specifically. It's not the primary care providers. It's not the nurses. It's not the anesthesiologists. Like it's the surgeon. The surgeon comes in, suits up. They do their thing. They can be a huge a-hole to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like they're the ones who get the glory. But like again, like ultimately, the actual health outcomes, like I'm not saying that their part isn't important. Like surgery is insanely difficult. It takes a special type of person.
Highly specialized field.
Yeah, it's very, very specialized. But at the same time, we're not being a nurse is really hard.
Yeah.
Trying to manage a patient's expectations, keeping them comfortable, making sure that they're doing what they need to do. That's a skill, but it's not a skill that's particularly valued.
You know, it's probably really hard giving someone a bad diagnosis. Like, that's got to be impossible.
What do you mean it's impossible?
I mean, like emotionally, as a person, like giving somebody a bad diagnosis, like that's got to be
Not if you don't care about people.
Yeah. Which
If you don't care about people, you don't care.
So you think doctors don't care about people?
I'm not saying that.
No, but that's a really good point. So there's this idea that certain professions, even like my own, it's that people go into it specifically because they care about people and not for kind of these more traditional, like, money or glory or all those things.
Prestige. Yeah.
Prestige. Being a surgeon is prestigious. Like, it's very, very
glory boy surgeons.
I even think about, like, here in New Orleans, one of the hospitals, I've never heard of this person because I'm not in the medical field myself, but they had billboards all over the city welcoming a specific heart surgeon.
Wow.
Welcome to the city. Welcome
wild.
to this hospital.
And when you do that, you're creating a monster.
It's like it's almost
But
like a cult of personality.
The idea that kind of people who are in helping professions are necessarily more trustworthy than other people, or that they're in it specifically because they care about people, is not necessarily true. And especially, I mean, it all goes back to kind of the way our system works, and especially in healthcare, like especially because it's such a large segment of our economy, there is money to be made there, and there's prestige. Like, and you can't, I'm not saying don't trust your doctor or anything, but also,
you don't know who your doctor is.
skeptical. It's okay.
You're listening to WHIV LP New Orleans 102.3, WHIVFM.org/listen. This would be an interesting thing to talk about with Mark Allen Derry, actually, because he is a doctor of infectious disease, and he's talked, to great extent on this station about how he's been, willing to, work with people and take, Medicaid and Medicare and sort of, work with patients who might not even be able to, and I don't want to speak for him or anything like that, but that's something that's also sort of interesting because they're again, I'm not saying that doctors don't care about their patients or anything like that either, but there are layers and there are different types of people that get into these sorts of fields for different kinds of reasons.
Yeah, and it's not. I'm not
saying that you're saying that doctors are bad.
No, not at all. But it's not even, because it's not even about that. It's more about kind of the way we as society view specific titles and how your job, because being a doctor is a job. It's a profession, it's a career, people are passionate about it, but it essentially is a job. But so the idea that your kind of job title would allow people to trust you more. So I think if you ask anyone, it's 4 out of 5 doctors say that this gum is good or whatever it is. And it's okay, well, what if you said 4 out of 5 janitors, right? But it's not, a doctor is not inherently, as a person, better than a janitor.
It's almost like the idea that a job title issues morality.
Yes, yeah.
Or authority. So, not even necessarily just morality, but, there's the way that our society functions is very sort of, faux scientifically based. There's a lot of authority that's wrapped up in the trappings of science. But the actual science, in a lot of times when these things sort of go forward, is not examined. So I think a lot about this in terms of studies that I can't cite an example from memory, but let's just say there's something about teacher evaluations, just for example, and there'll be this thing that comes out and says that this element of teacher evaluations is shown to have 25% growth in student outcomes or whatever. And then so if you actually go back and read it and you say, oh, no, this what the actual data that they have represented that's proving their case is totally suspect. The things that they've examined have nothing to do with the claim that's being made. And it's really difficult to be critical of these sorts of things because they have, the stamp of Tulane or something on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a just kind of an anecdotal example of this, I have some clients who are currently working, within the legal system on kind of class action cases, and we were trying to get in contact with, the attorneys, and I knew that the person that we're actually trying to get in contact with is a paralegal. Well, my client reacted so poorly to the idea that, oh, we're not actually talking to the attorney, we're talking to the paralegal. But essentially, the paralegal is the person who actually knows what's going on. The paralegal is the person who's ensuring that your paperwork's in on time. They're the one who's actually emailing people, the other side, to kind of figure out what's going on with timelines, what's going on with settlements. They're the ones who are reaching out to the clients to actually inform them of what's going on.
There's so many people that work.
Paralegals do hella work.
There's so many people that work under like lawyers. They're like legal clerks who like have to pull like look up all these like.
Yeah, they're the ones doing the research. They're the ones who find that case and win the argument. And it's this idea that because we like to kid ourselves. I mean, obviously not anyone in this room, but societally, we like to kid ourselves that we're a meritocracy and that we reward people who work hard and that a CEO works really, really hard and that's why they make so much money. But essentially, you can look at it.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you can essentially look at it. It's like, okay, well, who's actually working harder? The attorney who's billing, $650 an hour or the paralegal who's getting paid $24 an hour, if that?
Let me give you a real world example of this real quick. You don't even have to go, it doesn't even have to be theory. For all you workers out there who you work with people who have, these great titles and they're so necessary to your corporation's functioning. Labor Day just passed. If you worked on Labor Day, don't you find it weird that all the important people had the day off and all the non-essential people, all the peons, had to come to work? Who's really essential and who's not?
So I have a lot of feeling, just to roll back to what you just said about the idea of meritocracy and how meritocracy is sort of judged. It's totally done in a retrospect based on results, right? So that person has a lot of money or they have this high, paying job in prestigious position because they work so hard to get it. And it's sort of like it doesn't. So essentially, that's the justification. They must have worked really hard, and they must have earned all the things that they have because they're in the position that they're in. As opposed to what we were talking about earlier, is that there's so many people that go into creating to making any kind of value, and I use that term like very consciously. But sort of like perceived value within the society, But again, who gets the credit and who doesn't is the question.
Like they think the people who own the machines at a factory are the most important.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk does like everything at Tesla.
And
or
it
Jeff
says
Bezos,
Elon Musk with the vision and not his engineers.
Yeah, or Jeff Bezos does every spot of work at Amazon, and it's completely ridiculous.
Again, how many times in your own job has your boss called in sick and then everybody kind of jokes, but joking, not joking? It seems like things run better. Yeah. It seems like things are more efficient.
Yeah, he's like almost like your boss isn't like putting their fingers in things,
Almost like.
Well, it's also, so even with that kind of hierarchical situation, but even, so just taking my own example, for instance, like I work really hard, I'm really good at my job. But to say that I got to where I'm at or that I was even able to get to where I am because of my own, like, because I'm just special would be really incorrect. I mean, my parents funded my education, my undergrad. So I had the space to be able to take an unpaid internship. I had the space to be able to say, oh yeah, well I'm going to...
You're going to have to work a job during this time, right?
Yeah. So I did, but it wasn't like I didn't have to. I nannied, right? Mm-hmm. So it was like my fun money. I wasn't worried about paying my rent. I wasn't worried about paying my tuition. I wasn't worried about a lot of the things most college students are worried about. Even going into social work. Yeah, I joke a lot about how I'm like, yeah, I chose a profession that's not really going to make any money. I had that luxury because I don't have a family to provide for. I don't have the kind of debt that a lot of people probably have because I've been really, really lucky. And my parents are really great people, and I like to think I'm a good person, and I'm good at my job. Again, I'm good. I try really hard. I care a lot about my job. But to say that I'm just somehow special and that's how I was able to get to where I'm at is absurd.
Most people are good at their jobs, no matter how bad their job is.
Yeah.
And the idea that the only reason that there's this sort of like the image that people aren't, and I think about this a lot because I'm a teacher, and a lot of the narrative over the past, couple decades has been that teachers are robbing children of their education because they're terrible teachers and they're lazy and they're, et cetera, and so on. And it's just one of those sorts of things where these are like I cannot think of a person who will go into a room with a bunch of children, sometimes more children than they were promised or that are allowed by the rules to have or whatever, and they just don't go completely and utterly insane.
Oh yeah. Oh god, even just nannying, I'm like thinking back to that. I'm like, oh lord, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
anything.
have a whole classroom full of kids.
Or nurses, or
Yeah.
or fast food workers. Like the fact that fast food workers aren't punching out every customer is just sort of like, that's kind of shocking.
Well, honestly, like this idea, kind of like my background and where I'm at now, has really informed a lot of my leftist viewpoints and like my disbelief in meritocracy. Because like I am where I am, I'm pretty successful in my career, yada yada, but I have clients who I'm like, oh, they're just objectively better people than me, and the only reason that I'm where I'm at in my life has nothing to do with me as a person. It has everything to do with where I was born, who I was born to, just this, like the schools, the education system I was in, the fact that there wasn't like lead in my paint, the fact that my drinking like my water coming out of my faucet was drinkable and fine, like those are all things that I had no control over and also didn't influence. So it's like, so I just sometimes, like, honestly, I like really, some of my clients, I'm like, oh my god, if you were in my place, you would be president by now. Like, they're just...
It doesn't matter if they would be. I mean, they'd just be, like, again, like, I don't mean to interrupt you, but, like these sort of, like, the hierarchical distinctions that we make, they're not necessarily based on any kind of merit,
Well, sure. So, I don't say that, like, merit, because I don't think
I know
I'm,
what
like,
you mean.
necessarily...
I know what you mean. I'm sorry.
No, because I think that is a thing. Like, the idea that only... Like, I see this a lot with my clients, like, that only the people who are, like, particularly noteworthy should be afforded, like, to be able to live, really.
Everybody deserves dignity.
Everybody deserves dignity. But it's just this idea that, like, it's just such a stark difference between, literal just circumstances of birth and, like, where we, like, the differences we are in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the different places we are in life. Like, I'm not going to say that I haven't, like, worked hard or that I didn't make choices that were, like, healthy and good or, whatever it is. I'm not going to, like, sell myself short. But I'm also saying the idea that, like, some of my clients are in the place they're at because of some fault of theirs, as like opposed to just systemic issues.
Yeah, that's just
absurd.
moralizing. That's moralizing justification,
Yeah.
and it's completely toxic and it's completely broken. And it's part of the reason that we have these sort of like institutions in our society that are victim blaming. That take people down out of that take people that essentially justify people who are in like a crisis.
Oh yeah.
And saying, well, you get what you deserve, right? So anyway, you have been listening to Good Morning Comrade on WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. You can check us out online at goodmorningcomrade.com. You can also check out our page on WHIV at WHIVFM/listen. I'm sorry, WHIVFM.org/good-morning-comrade. You can also check us out on all the stuff. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Later.